car mechanics, a pretty important feature of any racing game. Here's how I got the cars to work in Drifto. Starting with the engine and drivetrain, the correct way to simulate this would be to fake an engine and a gearbox, using things like RPM, torque curves and gear ratios to calculate some torque to apply the wheels. But that's hard, so instead there is just a single invisible force pushing the car forwards. To stop the car from accelerating to infinity beyond, I decrease this force the faster the car is travelling. Suspension. While the car will function without a suspension, it's pretty bad. Like most non-simulator car games, a simple spring and damper at each wheel is enough. For a really good explanation of this, I would highly recommend Toyful Games' video on the topic. Steering. Drifto is a bit weird here, where the engine and drivetrain simulation produced a result that somewhat resembles its real life counterpart. The steering is way different. Usually, when you tell the car to turn, you're just turning the front wheels, and then the friction between the front wheels and the ground will change the car's direction when in motion. However, this doesn't feel very good in Drifto. The simplified control scheme implies a much more direct influence over how the car moves. My solution is to just directly turn the car. In Drifto, when you tell the car to turn, it's actually given a rotational velocity. Friction. This is what I consider to be the secret sauce of Drifto. It's what gives the cars weight and allows satisfying drifts, while still being forgivable enough to control the car with just a steering slider. To understand how Drifto does this, and why it's different, we need to have an idea of how real tyres work. With real tyres, there is almost always some slipping. In terms of lateral movement, the harder you turn into a corner, the more the tyres slip and allow the car to move slightly away from the perfect rolling line. In regular driving, this is unnoticeable, because tyres grip up very well at small slip angles. But when pushed too far, they cannot keep up with the increased slip and become far less effective. This is cool because it allows drifting. This doesn't feel very good in Drifto though. The simplified input scheme demands much more precise control over how the car behaves in deep slides. So I came up with this. A slight deviation from a more realistic model. This curve is derived from 3 variables I can control for each car. The constant friction variable controls how much friction the wheels could exert regardless of slip angle. More of this makes the car want to straighten up at low drift angles, but alone is very unforgiving at high angles. The squared friction term lies on the other end of the spectrum. It affects how much the car grips up only at higher drift angles, allowing a larger range of control over deceleration in deep slides. Then there's the linear term. It sits in the middle and gives the cars a more balanced feeling, providing more and more friction with more angle, but without the sudden jump that the squared term gives. The result is a friction model that gives the feeling of drifting a car, while also being forgiving enough to make up for the lack of brake and accelerator. Most cars in Drifto make use of all of these. They allow a massive amount of control over how the cars respond to different inputs and environments. Engine sound. A huge part of the car illusion in video games is sound. A very crude approach to engine sounds is using one recording of an engine and changing the pitch and speed depending on the car's RPM. This is enough for Drifto, but there's a small problem. For this to be convincing enough, the pitch changes must reflect the use of gears. Pitch will increase as the car speeds up and then drop down when upshifting. To make this work, we derive an RPM estimate from the car's speed. Using the max speed of the car, we can calculate speed ranges that would make sense for each gear. We can then find the distance of the current speed through the best gear and use that to pitch up or down the engine sound clip. I've extended speed ranges for each gear such that they overlap, only allowing shifting gears when out of the range of the current, to prevent quick changes up and down when hovering around that speed zone. This, combined with an interpolation to smooth out the changes, gives us engine sounds. I've also added skid sounds, body roll and wheel rotation. All of these pieces are important to make the cars in Drifto feel like cars. Let me know what you think in the comments. Download Drifto now on the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. Subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about more devlogs. Don't worry, there'll be less sparse in the future. Thank you, and I'll smell you later.